Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. Once again, temporary name. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Dispatches from Elsewhere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we finally, obviously, our, Janice, Peter, Fredwin, and Simone end up, going into that cellar or basement area and end up finding Clara's room. It seems empty at first, but then at one point they find a painting of her, but it looks so realistic, but it's not. And then there's other things in the room because it's there's a thing that's drawn. It was really interesting where it's it looks like there's tools on it. There's a hammer. There's a not protractor. I don't know what that thing is called. It's the one that makes you help you draw circles in math. It's like a math tool. And at the very end was a flashlight. Everything else was fake except for the flashlight. I was like, oh, that's so trippy how that works like that, like perspective and stuff like that. I'm not an art person. I'm not very well versed in art, but the fact of the matter is it was just kind of neat just how it kind of messes with your mind like that. But basically they turn off the lights. Because I love even Janice being with my phone, they upgraded it. Now I just got used to know how to work it. And Peter takes it and he's like, oh, I'm going to help you. But nevertheless, they used a flashlight and they're able to read Clara's story. And I think it's a really inspiring and very heartfelt story in the grand scheme of things. Basically, I just like how it was told, where basically you learn that Clara was a girl who in Fishtown was just, especially the aesthetic of it being black and white at first. And the fact of the matter, Fishtown was just it's kind of like a story of just people just living their lives. It's just kind of this is the place you're born, this is the place you live, and this is the place you die, which I can understand. I literally come from, my hometown is literally a small town like Fishtown, and so I can kind of understand that situation. And I think it's so interesting because obviously this story resonates with all our characters, but you can definitely see resemblance between Clara and Peter, but more so than anyone. But you can definitely see reminiscence of it, similarities with everyone else's story. But we'll kind of get to the fact of the matter. She talked about her mom getting swallowed by darkness. Now I chalk that up to maybe that meaning her mom just kind of got struggled by just swallowed by life in general and left, or swallowed by darkness in the sense that she died. But the fact is her dad was saying this is your story, you don't need to kind of think about stuff like that. But she's for her it's it doesn't stop me from thinking about it. And so for her, it's this day was like any other day, but then just something struck her, and she ended up drawing that window because it gave her enough. Because at first she was kind of inspired, and then she was able to see. She felt something she couldn't really describe. All she could describe it as was blue, and she took the blue and she painted a window, and she escaped into this elsewhere, basically a world she can escape to, rather than being in a world she has to escape from. So it was a different version of Fishtown is bright and colorful. And then she meets her new besties, Mateo, Kimber, and Sanjay. And she kind of breaks down everything that is kind of special about them. She's going to make more, it's for the first time, because she's even oh, that's an ice cream truck. It's is this something new, or has it always been there and I just never opened my eyes enough to see? So she's seeing the world through brand new eyes. She's kind of opened herself up to kind of this new experience. And obviously her friends kind of couldn't see the world the way she was. She was oh, maybe that garbage truck doesn't have to be a garbage truck. Maybe it's a Zamboni, kind of letting her imagination fly. But no one was and even amongst her friends, was willing to see the city the way she did. And obviously, sinking back into our, Peter, Simone, and Fredwin and Janice, I love the whole thing of I forgot to talk about it, but I love that whole thing about Fredwin being oh, black light is used to find scorpions. And he's oh, scorpions, and it's there's no scorpions, and it's oh, it's for the writing on the wall. He's yeah, I knew that. I was I love that he wants to prove that he's right, but he's kind of irrational at some points in time. But he's no, I'm gonna go up here by myself, and they're oh, we're gonna have to wait for the sign from Fredwin, and there's some loud noises oh, Fredwin. They go up there, and he's oh, the place is booby trapped. It's no, you just tripped over a chair and everything. So I love that. But what I also thought was really neat in the way the episode was executed was also that was one way of displaying part of the story. The next part was apparently Fredwin kind of smells something in the air. It's saltpeter, and then Peter's no, I don't carry around spices. But he ends up lighting a match, and it kind of reveals words kind of secretly hidden in the walls, and it's the continuation of her story. And I thought that was so good. because like obviously the story was kind of hitting Peter more so than anyone, because I think he felt it, because while the story was being told, he was looking at the picture of Clara and she was like, come on, come closer, you might not believe me, so I'm going to show you. But nevertheless, continuing her story, she creates this art, like, you know, it's her idea, because basically she knew she couldn't really explain what she wanted to explain to people for them to see what she saw, so she wanted them to see it for themselves, because seeing is believing. And so basically she revealed it to everyone. And I liked how the art is the way it is manifested, in the sense of like it's there on the building, but it's also like it is like a real waterfall and stuff like that. Her art came to life, and it's like that's how people are seeing it. She's also like, it doesn't hurt that an ice cream truck crashed and there's a whole bunch of ice cream that dumped out that everyone kind of gets. And so from there forth, like, you know, her and her friends, they pick up tools and they're inspired. And basically because of this, they kind of go through town kind of like being a little rambunctious and stuff like that, because they're bored and everything, but they also spread it around. They create, you know, the Elsewhere Society. These are the beginning stages of it, like the room Peter and Simone had went to in episode 2, the one with the cartoon animations. Like that was their main hub, their little get together. And I just thought it was kind of like sweet how everything was kind of doled out like that, and obviously continuing to spread across the town and inspiring people and everything. And the fact of the matter is, when it was all said and done, like, the entire town kind of got behind it. Like they kind of woke up. They were kind of able to see things kind of the way Clara did for the first time. You know, she was able to spread hope to people. Like, whereas this world was kind of dark and just like black and white, there was color to it now, like I was saying before. But then like this lady pulls up because she was asking who did all this, and Mateo pointed to Clara being the one behind it. I was like, that's so interesting. So we break there, and then like, you know, Peter, it's like the fact of the matter is he finds the story. And, you know, because someone's like, what's up? And he's like, oh, he found like the story inspiring and stuff like that. And obviously for everyone's like, okay, we'll kind of break for today and come back tomorrow. Fact of the matter is, I know you guys don't do this in your own lives, but try to kind of think using your brains. But then Peter was like, well, Simone has an art degree. She's like, what? He's like, yeah, you have an art degree. You're an artist. So he figured like this might be kind of the best way to kind of decipher everything. And even for everyone's like, that's not a stupid idea. And Peter's like, thank you. But yeah, I like that. And then like, you know, like someone's like, I can think about it. I guess I can think about trying, you know, getting, you know, help with this because of my thing. But it's like, so who are you, Peter? And she's like, what? Because he was like, what? Because for Simone, it's like, I'm the tragic artist. Fredwin's the guy that kind of takes us off essentially the beaten path and kind of gets us all off the road. And Janice is Janice, but who are you, Peter? He was like the guy who tries to be brave but embarrasses himself. And Simone's like, yeah, that kind of fits. But I love like when they're about to leave and everything, Peter was like, Simone, I never said you were tragic. She's like, I know. And I was like, oh. But she goes to meet her professor, and I think once again, little by little, you're seeing everyone else be inspired by the situation. I think it's kind of neat. First, you see Simone. First, for Simone, you know, she's talking with a professor. He's asking her if she's going to re-enroll. But for her, it's like, oh, I don't want to make a big life decision. He's like, why is that a big life decision? And I thought it was kind of a neat. Once again, the perspective of this show, I think, is kind of neat, where it's kind of almost like, it's almost this aspect. And I think that's the commentary they're going for. It's the whole aspect of growing up. When you grow up, you're believed to like leave behind stuff like childlike wonderment and stuff like that. Your naivety, your way of viewing the world, the beauty in the world, like having that childlike eyes when you look at the world in this beautiful way, like the idea that you can't quite. Because even Clara was like, my nonchalance is like, what does that mean? I don't know, but it is what it is. But I think for Simone, because for her, she's like, I went down this path to kind of like, this is where I want my life to be. But she's like, I don't want to be 60 and kind of regretting what I did. Because at first, she's like, when I was in high school, I enjoyed art because it was something I liked better than other subjects. She went to school and everything for it. But then she just stopped because it didn't make her happy anymore. So she doesn't know what she's planning on doing. And even the dude was like, I think he said like his major was like marine biology or something like that, but he didn't enjoy getting wet, so he found art. And it's like, it doesn't have to be a big life decision. Just try stuff out. There's no such thing as wrong in this path. And then she thinks about, because Clara has said like, it doesn't matter if it's wrong, doesn't matter if it's wrong. You know, basically in life, there is no such thing as wrong. Like, try stuff out. If it doesn't fit, you move on to something else that fits. You find what fits you. And that was kind of, I think for Simone, that was kind of something she needed to hear. And so I thought that's kind of, finding her nonchalance. And at the same time, we see, Peter finding his nonchalance because, you have Clara talking to him, and he's like, oh, you're just kind of in my head. And then the fact is, he does that one thing. Like, as we learned from Peter, he never picked like a favorite song because he liked a lot of music, but he never held on to like something being special. So he picked one song and added it to his playlist. But Clara was like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if you shared it with other people? My initial thought was like, oh, she's asking him to unplug his headphones, play it loud in the office. No, for her, she was saying spread it to everyone. So using the data he's able to use, he basically hijacks everyone's playlist included. Even one of those points, because we see other people kind of enjoy it. It's kind of weird. Well, I'll go ahead. Well, for one, it's like the cheer squad and everything, and then the barbershop. It makes me feel kind of interesting. The dude sweeping in the barbershop reminds me of my dad. Like, he kind of looks like my dad a little bit, so that just kind of made me go, I don't know. It just got me think about my dad. Maybe just because I'd also talked to him earlier today too, so maybe he already was in the back of my mind when I saw it. But it's just like he just really reminded me of my dad. Getting a little, that made me get a little sappy right there. Sorry. God, I got so turned off, lost my train of thought because of that. Regardless. But the fact is, even at one point we see it happen at a funeral, so it wasn't all like fine and dandy. But at the same time, like, Clara's kind of happy with him about like kind of spreading, this happiness, because it's about Peter making other people feel this way. His boss comes over and and I love Peter's like singing along, and his boss comes over and he just kind of goes back to the way he was, kind of like slouching and just kind of being, And so his boss is like, oh, the fact of the matter is what you did was wrong. Basically, the playlist that people build is kind of representation of their soul, but you altered that soul without letting them know. So but for Peter, it was like, I just, we let people kind of get caught in this system of them listening to the same songs over and over again, kind of like keeping them shackled in this thing. And I just want to let them hear something outside of that, so that they know, like, oh, this is the pathway to finding something new, finding something interesting, finding something that resonates with you. But then it's like, and then they do that thing again, blah, 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 work stuff, work stuff. And then like Peter's just sitting there and he's like, I'm not going to let you, like, I don't want this feeling I have to diminish, so I quit. And he's like, what? And he's like, I quit. Like, because obviously that was for him. It's like, and it's kind of a similar thing for Clara, where it's like, you had this moment of joy and you want to kind of keep it lasting and want to kind of let it diminish. And he's like, you can't quit. He's like, no, you're not going to tell me what. He's like, no, you can't quit because I just fired you. Weren't you listening to anything I said? He was like, actually, no, I wasn't. But he kind of gets up and he walks away and he's smiling, because I think for Peter, he's happy, and then you have Janice. And I love this representation of like when Janice is talking to her husband, it's like they are walking together and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, I was like, what's up? I was like, it's not her dreaming. It's like, this is her kind of this is what she sees when her and her husband are, when she talks to him. And it's interesting because, because she sees this whole thing, like she sees like Fredwin, Simone, and Peter are inspired by, Clara's story for a different reason. They find it all inspiring, but for Janice, she sees a different perspective of it. Like, it's like she sees, like, she gets this feeling like there's actually something sad to it and I think once again, it's the instance of her being the older, more mature lady. Like, she's lived a life, it's like, because whereas like Janice had whereas Janice kind of had left behind a part of herself, all the stuff she wanted to do and be before, like not wanting marriage to change her. That side of her kind of represented the elsewhere society, whereas like her older self, kind of who she is now, kind of represents a little bit of the Jejune Institute to a certain extent. So it's interesting, that kind of balance of what her character kind of represents in that regard. And but she's like, oh yeah, I know I'm overthinking things. That's kind of an aspect I picked up from the children. But then the lady that's watching over, the nurse lady that's watching over her husband is like, oh, you sent me this text message. And I forgot all that stuff. It's like, I'm having fun. I forgot all the stuff that was said. And it's like, hashtag ice bucket challenge, Black Santa. And Janice is like, wait, what? And I love that. There was even an adorable moment where like, Fredwin, she was taking Fredwin to the bathroom to kind of get him cleaned up and stuff like that. He's like, you don't have to hold my hand. I was like, oh, that's super adorable. Because I think when she looks at Fredwin, because Fredwin's could be, who knows, but I would assume like Fredwin's supposed to be kind of like around the same age as her son. So it probably just made her kind of go, I mean, she is legitimately the mother of the group because she's literally the only mother in the group. But I just thought that was kind of sweet. But the fact is, like, at first I was like, was it Fredwin that texted that? Because even Janice would be like, oh, who had her phone the longest? None other than Fredwin. So I figured as much. But But Fredwin kind of finishes Clara's story. We see that that lady that it was Octavio that sent her. Like he obviously this is him trying to get Clara as part of the Jejune Institute. I kind of skipping around. They end up kind of following another clue, and I love the entire time Fredwin's kind of like talking about like shush, I need you guys to think. But don't think out loud. Think quietly to yourself. I'm trying to figure this out. Let me think. I love that being his whole thing. And then the whole conversation between Simone and Peter. She's like, "What's up with you?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I quit my job." She's like, "Really?" It's like, "Well, apparently I got fired, but I didn't hear that. But I'm still proud of myself for quitting my job." And she's like, "Good for you," And he seemed happy, But when it was all said and done, like Janice ended up figuring out the next thing, and it was in that stuff being sewed, and they pulled a string and it started revealing the rest of the story that the Jejune Institute, Octavio in particular, was trying to bring Clara in. That basically his idea was to take her ideas and kind of, it was almost like where hers was kind of very like independent. It was not the same thing, but it's like he wanted to kind of corporatize, like kind of manufacture and kind of like on a mass scale kind of produce her ideas. Because for him, it's like, this is a group of special people, and he wanted to invite her in. I even love that whole thing with the chocolate, and that was kind of interesting. I've never done that before, taking milk and then melted chocolate into it. And Clara's like, that's super good. Because I was about to say, because when it comes to me, mainly I go either Hershey's or Nestle Quick. I'm a big Nestle Quick fan. Granted, I haven't had Nestle Quick in a couple of years. Regardless, going on a tangent. Probably shouldn't even mention the brand specifically, just because I'm probably being an issue. But regardless, I just thought that was kind of neat. But for him, it's like, because she was like, the fact is, I didn't do this all alone. I have my friends. He was like, of course. But basically, he kind of it's like, you should meet my friends. They're great. You're going to love them. But then his idea for her was like, you kind of have to go it alone. It's like, because it's like, this is a road kind of for special, very special, important people. So you're going to have to make that decision where you're going to leave your friends behind to kind of continue. But you can continue here. They have so many opportunities, people to help you spread your ideas, spread hope. Basically, it's almost like he's trying to package hope and sell it to people, like I said, on a mass scale. Whereas she's, once again, it's just like, if you want to put it into other terms, like I brought up before, like this is like, she's an independent artist movie wise, and if you look at Martin Scorsese wise, it's like, the Jejune Institute could be seen as those theme park rides, those big budget movies, stuff like that. I know it's not the best example to use, but it's the one that's kind of stuck in my head right now, so I went with it. But the fact of the matter is, when it was all said and done, Clara didn't take it up, because she was like, for her, it's like, no, we're kind of starting a revolution here. No stopping this now. Like, so she wasn't going to she wasn't going to let the Elsewhere society kind of fall apart. She went back to her friends, and obviously Octavia was like, you know what you have to do. But the problem was, now like it started kind of flooding her ideas. Like, I guess you can make the argument that's when the darkness started creeping in, because she's like, well, maybe maybe I could do more at the Jejune Institute. Because she's like, no, hope isn't something that's just meant to kind of be like kind of like packaged and sold to people. It's like, it should be something that's just naturally for everyone. And so, and I like obviously, like, she gets snatched up by the lady, but it turns into the cartoon when she's defending herself, and she ends up stabbing the lady in the eye. She's running, and Mateo is like, Clara, give my hand, like, reach out my hand, but the lady swallows her up. And I like that was all animated, but then it switches back to reality, and Mateo's just kind of looking out, and he goes back inside, because I think at that moment, he forgot about Clara. So it's hard to say whether that's real, or whether that's supposed to be a hyperbolization of what happened, that maybe, like, she left, and she disappeared, and no one ever knew, so it's almost like she got forgotten, like all the good, because it seems like it went back to black and white and everything, and then it looked like all that she had added to Fishtown, how all they had added to Fishtown was gone, like her vision of the beauty and everything, kind of the way she saw the world, the way she got everyone else to see, it seemed like in that moment it all disappeared. So any traces of what was Clara, what made her special, what she was bringing, that hope to town, but then sadly, when it was all said and done, Janice kind of walks away because she's pissed at Fredwin for saying what he did, because it's like, I missed that text, and because of you, like, what have happened if Lev had died while, because that's what she's scared of, like, because she's afraid of, like, not being by his side when something goes down. So it's a situation of, like, it's a thing, like, you can't blame her of being like, this is a man that she's been married to for so long, they had a family together, they had a life together, that she doesn't want to quite let him go. So it's like Janice isn't living her life because she isn't willing to kind of let her husband go. She's too afraid to let him go because she's afraid, who is she without him? Obviously, that being a part of her story. And obviously he's saying, like, Fredwin cannot understand her situation because he doesn't have anyone. But who's to say Fredwin doesn't? Like, the fact of the matter is, we know a little bit about him, but we don't know the full extent. So he might have extended family that he's close to that he doesn't really have the opportunity. Like, I feel like there's definitely more to Fredwin, but for her perspective, it's kind of like, you don't know what I'm going through. Like, you don't have the relationship like I have with my husband. You don't have anyone like that in your life. And that's kind of, and so she says goodbye to Peter and Simone and kind of leaves. And I love Fredwin being like, Janice, because he was like, I'm sorry, I really don't understand why you're kind of acting like this. He's like, oh, Janice is taking the game so serious. And even Simone's looking at him like, really, dude? But he says, like, I'm gonna go get some air. I was like, because I think it hurt, because I think legitimately he keeps it a situation of, like, he doesn't like, he likes having Janice around. I think he likes being around all of them. That was even why Peter was like, maybe that's why we were brought together. You and me were partnered up. I mean, why we were all brought together, because they're a representation of the beginning of the Elsewhere Society with Clara and her friends, and it's kind of a repeat of this. And Clara is kind of represented by, it's like, it's almost like a repeated history where it's like Clara and them, and this is the new. I mean, granted, there were other groups, but obviously this group is the one we focus on the most, and Peter is definitely the Clara of the group. Someone who wanted to be special, wanted to feel special. So, but I like that moment between Peter and Simone where, it's like, she's like, you look, happy for him. It's like, what are you going to do now? And he's like, I don't know, but I'll figure something out. And Simone talked about, it's like she had talked to her professor about not going back to school and everything. And it's like, I'm glad I met you. And he's like, I'm glad I met you too. And you could tell Simone wanted to say something, but I think it's a thing of, like, she's afraid to kind of take those steps forward. Just because, it's so interesting because Peter said, like, oh, the one that does something brave but embarrass himself. It seems like she's kind of on the lane of, like, she wants to say, try to be brave, but she is kind of scared of embarrassing herself. But more so than anything, she's scared of ruining anything. So that's why, like, her and Peter haven't become a thing, because she wants to just stay friends because she's afraid if they become more, it's like she's going to run away and kind of ruin things. And I think that's where that was kind of starting. But then, like, her professor got back to her and talks about the fact is that everything with this whole, Fishtown thing, it sounds like something that went down 20 years ago. So it's saying this whole Clara thing, it's now tiptoeing to, it's real. This all went down 20 years ago. So this is almost like the continuation of some legacy. So Clara is out there probably, but she is older and everything. So I think that's kind of interesting. And then at the end, you had Octavio snapping his fingers. I thought was kind of interesting because, like, the episode began with Clara being like, I'm Clara and you're me. And obviously Octavio kept the entire time the intros being like, imagine if so-and-so was you. So it's just interesting to kind of get the script flipped a little bit, and even ending it with Octavio snapping his fingers. So it sets up a lot of really interesting things. Obviously, the dynamic of our group kind of falling apart a little bit while still staying, because obviously Simone and Peter are solid, but obviously there's the Fredwin and Janice thing, so it's a little rocky right now. But also the potential, like, this is real, because Peter's been the only one who's been adamant about this being real, So we'll have to wait to see where everything takes us in the next episode, whether this is real. Is this just a game based on something that was real, or is this more than just a game? It seems like it is, but I'm really interested to kind of dive into this going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.